Hello and welcome again. In this lab, we will introduce multiple versions for a deployment and then learn how to use Istio to control the traffic to these versions. First, let's visit our current setup. We're sending HTTP traffic into the service mesh. The traffic is being handled by the Istio ingress gateway. We have a virtual service in place to direct the traffic to the REST client Kubernetes service. The REST client application then forwards the call to the customer's service. The customer's application returns the data of the customers, which is sent back to the user. Now consider a scenario where we have developed a new feature in the customer's application. In addition to the first and last name, it has been enhanced to return the country the customer lives in. This is how our setup would look like once we introduce the customer's v2 deployment. The customer service will now point to both the v1 and v2 versions. Let's go ahead and deploy v2 of the customer's application. To do that, let's delete the current deployment of customer's application and recreate it by naming it as v1. We will also add a label to denote that this deployment represents version v1. So we have slightly modified the deployment for the customer's application, and now we have added a label specifying version v1 to it. Okay, let's test that the application still works. Alright, all is good. Now we will introduce customers version 2. So let's take a look at the manifest first. We name the deployment as customers v2 and add a label to specify that this deployment represents version v2. The Docker image is Aditya Samant Learning's customers 0.9. Let's create the deployment. You will now see that the customer service has two endpoints. Let's hit 100 requests to the gateway and check the output. As you can see, the requests are split between v1 and v2 of the customer's application. This is evident as in some requests you see that the country information is returned, while in other requests it is not. Let's view this in Kiali. So I'll open the Kiali dashboard. So here you can see that the traffic is split between customers v1 and v2. Let's enable the traffic distribution label. Okay, and you see that it is a fairly even distribution. Now let's say we are not ready to have v2 receive production traffic just yet. We want to restrict that all the traffic flows to v1 only. We can achieve this in Istio with a combination of a virtual service and a destination rule. A destination rule defines policies that apply to traffic intended for a service after routing has occurred. First, we need to make Istio aware of the two versions of the customer's deployment. This is done by means of defining a subset inside the destination rule. So let's take a look at the destination rule manifest. So this describes the simplest form of a destination rule. The name is customers. The hosts is customers, which relates to the Kubernetes service named customers, and we define two subsets by using the version label on the associated pods. So let's create the destination rule. Next, we will create a new virtual service for the customer's application and specify that all the traffic must be routed to v1. Let's take a look at the manifest. The name is customers vs v1. The host is customers as it relates to the customer's Kubernetes service. The route rule specifies the destination subset as v1, which means all traffic must be routed to v1 only. Let's create the virtual service. Let's fire 100 requests through the gateway once again and observe the results. This time you will observe that all requests will be directed to v1, which is proved by the absence of the country information. We can validate this in Kiali as well. And there you see that the graphical view does not show any invocation to v2. Well, that's it for this lab. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next one.